I think if that all falls into place, Philly, San Fran, Minnesota, Dallas gets Philly, Dallas goes into Philly and beats Philly. And Dallas gets San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. All right, let's do it. BVSA Sports Show, episode 13. Joe and Verge, we are back with a ton of stuff to get into. Happy NFL wildcard weekend, super NFL wildcard weekend, I believe it's called. 6 games over the course of Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We can dive in a little bit into that college football debacle that happened on Monday night, but let's start. We got our baseball guy back with us. Let's start there. Carlos Correa, a Giant for a couple days, a Met for a couple of weeks. Yep. He is officially now back with the Twins, 6 years, $200 million. I believe the offer on the table for the Mets was 6 years, $157 million. So he took the extra money, went with the Twins.
They got that low, 157.
I think
such a weird number.
I think they cut it in half. I think they cut the initial deal in half. I think it was 12 for like 312 or 3 whatever it was.
Wasn't something like that. But this Correa deal, this whole debacle, you said the college football was a debacle. This has been a debacle. For starters, the Giants having Judge for all of 7 minutes and Correa for all of 6 days, for then Correa to get bad medical reports because of his just shoddy physicals, to then go to the Mets, have Steve Cohen come out and say right away, like, I don't care what the reports say, he's a Met. They have basically record day ticket sales. To then 2 weeks later, that's off the table because the same medical reports, just the physicals tell all, which I guess the Twins knew about last year and still signed him.
Yep.
He's back with them, and the deal is actually potentially worth up to $270 million. There's 2 vesting option years that can get him almost $270 million or something like that.
Based on what? That he stays healthy?
Based on that they retain him. Like, it's either mutual options or club options that if he stays healthy, if he hits certain numbers, like it's a potentially almost 8-year, $270 deal.
Gotcha. This has been a nightmare, right? A headache, whatever you want to call it. I think I'm on record a couple weeks ago saying it when the deal broke. I think Frankie was sitting next to me, maybe even Taylor, and they thought I was crazy for saying this. Correa was gravy for the Mets. He was an extra piece, almost unnecessary. I would go as far to say, listen, I'm never going to turn down a player like that or say I don't want him or that I'm not happy that he's on our team. But to me, this really filled up our infield forever. Yeah. That these young kids like Beatty, who we saw last year, Mauricio, who hopefully we see this year, where are these guys going to go, right? We already saw a failed experiment with Dominic Smith, who I think is an outstanding player, and I wish him all the best. I wish he wasn't in our division still with the Nationals, but they try to turn him into a left fielder when they said, hey, we have a Pete Alonso guy here. You're never going to play this position, days off when he DHs, whatever. The DH in the NL helped, but that was a failed experiment, and now he's gone.
He's going to come torch you guys now.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt. He's the next, Freddie Freeman-type numbers against the Mets, right? Oh, yeah. Absolutely, hands down. But going back to Correa, I'm okay with this, and I talk to a lot of kids, in our cages and in lessons and stuff, and oh, you're a Met fan, of course you're going to say that, you have to, act like it's okay. No, I'm actually very okay with this. I said it weeks ago. I wasn't jumping for joy the way I was when we signed Justin Verlander after we lost Jacob deGrom kind of deal. So I'm okay with this. Let him go. It was pending physical for 30 seconds, and then it was confirmed. Because I don't know how that works. They do new physicals every year, even if they stay with the same team, or because it was a new contract, they had to get another physical?
New contract means new physical, but their doctors had cleared him last year. So whatever they saw last year that allowed the 3-year 105 deal to happen was going to not really prevent this one unless it just deteriorated and got that much worse. To stay on the Mets for 2 seconds, you guys are going to be fine. Let alone your pitching staff. Brett Beatty is the real deal. What he did in such a small sample size is just a glimpse of what you're going to see. He's your next David Wright. He's going to hold down third base and be a hometown kid in the sense of just do the right thing every day, show up and play 100%. He is that guy. So to lose Correa, who, say what you want, hothead, all this, He is a good leader. We've watched him lead on the big stage.
Mm-hmm.
He gets the job done.
Yep.
Him going to Minnesota now creates a whole new parallel of what does this do with Royce Lewis, who's coming off a second ACL, which he hurt himself playing a new position because they tried to move him out of short and put him in center field, and he tried to make a robbing catch and came up short and banged into the wall towards ACL for the second time. Does he go back to short? They have guys in the minors who are studs ready to come up to play short. And I've heard the rumor that they're looking at Correa to play first in the long run. That he's athletic enough, he's got good enough hands. At some point, his legs won't be under him because, as I have gone on, off record, seeing I haven't been on the show in a little bit, I think Correa, if he stays at short, if he stays at third, if he stays at any infield position outside first base, expect a blowout of a knee, of an ankle, of something by 2025.
Yep.
He needs to be as off his legs as humanly possible for a professional baseball player. So if that means first base and he's platooning with Alex Kirilloff and company of whoever because they don't have Sano anymore, like somebody's going to have to take some load off him. He's going to DH a bunch, which then means Luis Ariz has to be in the field more. So you have a lot of moving parts in a topsy-turvy AL Central that is only going to get more competitive as the young Tigers come up, as the young Royals come up. The White Sox just re-upped and got everybody. Shout out to Liam Hendricks. You're unbeat this. I don't know if that was ever talked about.
There wasn't, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That is a scary division. And Cleveland won the division last year, so they're good and they're young.
Yep. So
this Correa thing is not over by any stretch of the imagination. The signing part of it is, but this is going to be out there for a while of a lot of fallout from it.
Yep. Every time he lands on the injured list, they're going to look at what was it, and if it's anywhere near that right ankle, it's going to be a conversation to end it. And to me, it was the right move for the Giants. They missed out on Judge and wanted to make a splash. Didn't work. It's the right move for the Twins, right? You've already seen him play for you, and it's whatever. The Mets, I think they made the right decision. Whoever the decision was made of either we're backing out or if him and Boris said they're backing out, the right decision was made. Move on. Nightmare's over. Let's move forward as a team, and now let's move forward as a show. The Carlos Correa saga, for at least right now, is put to bed. So go to another shortstop real quick. Trevor Story.
Fake shortstop at this point.
Fake shortstop, converted second baseman. You know a lot more about this than I do, but it sounds like he's opting to have elbow surgery, which is going to miss a significant portion of the year, which usually means the whole year.
Yeah, he is likely out. With how the Red Sox have played and with their whole compete, not compete, sign who, don't sign this guy, there was a chance he was going to play short. I don't actually know who's going to play up the middle for them at all this season.
Yep.
Because they also DFA'd Jeter Downs a month ago. So the guy that they got in the trade for Mookie Betts, another franchise face, they're losing people left and right, and this Trevor Story thing is emblematic of who they've become as a franchise recently, of who we put out there doesn't totally matter. We have one franchise face at this point. They have to make something of Casas now that he's basically their first baseman.
Yep.
To lose a veteran like that, to lose a guy that you might have had to move back to short with losing Bogarts, it's just another breakdown of a guy that shouldn't, I don't really know all the details of why he's having this elbow surgery, but
also, why is he not having it 2 months ago?
Or 3 months ago, or at the end of the season when they're out.
Right.
And that goes to the why didn't Harper have elbow surgery the minute the World Series ended?
Yep.
2 days later, you should be under the knife.
Yeah. I'm sure they have their reasons, but it's to me right now, I'm thinking this Red Sox team is going to finish at the bottom of this division.
Bottom of the bottom.
It's pretty clear cut. Maybe even the bottom of the American League.
Well,
this team is...
This entire division got better over the offseason. The Yankees re-upped and got a new arm.
Yep.
Toronto's rotation is arguably top 5, and their young bats are just going to get more consistent, and they sign the right pieces to replace the pieces that they trade in Teoscar Hernandez.
Yep.
Baltimore is only going to get better and only going to bring up more of their young guys. Grayson Rodriguez is going to come back and be ready. Adley's now going to be in a first full year. Gunnar Henderson, first full year. You have the guys ready to make a splash, and Tampa always figures it out. They always find a way to win 85 to 95 games. Boston finds themselves easily the cellar dwellers and potentially, like you said, cellar dwellers of the entire American League, which, depending on how Pittsburgh does in the National League, depending on how certain teams across the rest of the league, we might see Boston with the first overall pick for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it's more baseball's more fun, whether Yankee fans want to admit it or not. But like baseball's more fun when the Red Sox are good.
Oh yeah,
right. Same thing like with the Yankees.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the Yankees. I don't want them to win anything ever. But like it's more fun when they come into town and play the Mets and they're hopefully both at the top of the standings versus they're kind of mailing it in for the year. So it'll be interesting to see. We're a couple weeks away from really diving into baseball. World Baseball Classic starts, I believe, second week of March.
Yeah, roughly sometime in the spring training.
Couple weeks from Super Bowl Sunday, February 12th, up until the World Baseball Classic, mixed in with a lot of March Madness, a lot of stuff coming up. But let's go now to the football side of things. And before we dive into the NFL, and again, that super wild card weekend that I couldn't be more excited for, despite the games this weekend, I think are going to be pretty disappointing. We got to start with arguably the most disappointing football game of any kind I have ever seen, the college football championship, Georgia and TCU, and all the conversations about, does TCU belong? Do TCU caliber teams belong? Last year was Cincinnati, and they got embarrassed in the semifinal, I believe, against Georgia. Yep. It wasn't 65-7, but it was pretty bad. And now you come this year, their final was Michigan, right? They let it all out on the line. They pulled it off. I didn't think they were going to win this game. I didn't think they were going to cover spreads. I didn't think they were really going to be competitive. I think I said it to one of our instructors, like 35-14. I did not think that Georgia's score would be nearly doubled and TCU's score would be cut in half after giving that prediction. 65-7, 38-7 at halftime. This is just an awful look for college football. And you would think, okay, they fixed it. Like this idea of 4 teams is ending. They're going to 12 teams in a couple of years. I think this is going to happen a lot more. Because now my understanding is it 4 teams get a bye or 6? I don't know how many teams would get a first round bye. I believe it's 4.
8 play, 4 get a bye,
and then it becomes 8 after that. Yeah. So now you're going to have a number 5 play against a 12. Number 5 and number 6 this year was USC and Alabama. Number 11 and number 12 was probably like Tulane and Oregon, like some above average Pac-12 team. Right? This is going to get messy. This is going to get ugly. This is not going to be very competitive until hopefully the second round, but I would say even the third round, when you go back to having 4 teams, and now who's going to have the TCU effect of last week it was Michigan, and they crushed it, they had nothing left. So now you're going to put it all out there, try to upset in Alabama, and then you have nothing left for the second round.
So I think, watching that on-field slaughter of TCU was garbage for the 2.5, 3 hours that it was. It was an unfortunate game, not what you want out of your college championship game. I actually have a different view on all of what you just said. One, I think the TCU-Georgia game on Monday was Georgia's been there, done that. Their team was pretty similar to what they had last year, same quarterback. The coach has been there. I think we saw a TCU team that had never been on the big stage, wasn't prepared for the speed, wasn't prepared for any of that, and it showed, and they just never got back to, like, a homeostasis level of, like, we're ready to compete. We can go play by play, drive by drive, try to stop them, try to just put points on the board. Now, on the flip side of that, of what you said of it might get worse for going to 12 teams, I think with the way the transfer portal has gone for football and basketball, more so than like baseball and other sports, I think that is a little more down the line. I think we're going to see a competitive balance like happen, that the third stringer who should be starting somewhere for Alabama, like, isn't Saban retiring? So I
don't think so.
I thought that was.
Not that I know.
Don't quote me on that. Don't clip that. But like, less guys are going to want to sit third string just because it's Alabama, where that isn't the guarantee to go start in the NFL anymore. Like, if I can go start, like, I'll go play for Deion Sanders. I'll go play for Oregon. Like, guys end up coming out of those places. Let's go spread out the talent. And those top 12 teams now might actually look a little more similar. I think the money that goes into some of these programs and into some of these NIL deals, depending on where they go, won't change. The Georgias, the Bamas, the big money schools will still have big money. But I think the pride of athletes comes first sometimes of, I don't know if I want to sit here no matter what money I'm getting in for my deals. Like, I want to go play, I want to go compete. And we'll start to see the Cincinnatis, the Oregons, the whoever, like, really make a more level playing field. I don't think it's going to be next year. I think the first couple of years of 12,
I think it starts 2024 or 6. Like, it's not next year. It's in a couple of years.
Either way, those years might be a little ugly, those first couple, but over the long run, you see it at a baseball level of, like, you don't have to go to Vandy to be the guy.
No, I get it. I do. Listen, I hope I'm wrong, number one. But I just don't see in the short term, right, as long as Nick Saban and Bama and Dabo Swinney and Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State, there'll always be this bias towards them, whether it's athletes going there or it's the selection committee being a little bit biased. They almost put Alabama in. A lot of people argue they should have put them in. And I think putting TCU in was the right move. I think putting Cincinnati in last year was the right move. But it's just a bad look that come next year's TCU team, and I'm not saying that school, whatever team has that run and that story, they're going to think, let me see. Oh, yeah, last 2 years they've gotten their doors blown off to a point where it wasn't competitive, right? The battle in the trenches, the lines, it looked like they were manhandling like a middle school offensive line when they're on defense and a defensive line when they're on offense. So just really not a good look. I hope that the 12 teams fixes it and the competitive balance that you talk about and everything Deion Sanders is doing right now with Colorado. I hope that is what transpires, but right now it's really hard to see. So with that said, let's finally get to the main event. Let's get to the NFL. Let's get into the games. Let's start. It's only right to start with the Buffalo Bills, and it's only right to continue to spread the great news about Damar Hamlin. A couple weeks removed now from that game. He was released from Cincinnati, the Cincinnati hospital. I don't know the exact term of the place he was in, the Cincinnati hospital. He went home, got tests with Buffalo medical staff at a hospital, and I believe he's been released from there as well. So I think he's home. He's good. Thank God. And we can now hone in on the games this weekend. And I would love to kind of go off of that with the Bills and the Bengals. Let's just fast forward to next week's Bills-Bengals game. Yeah. Because the Bills are playing the Dolphins at home. No Tua, right? Just worked out that they're going to play the third-string quarterback, Skylar Thompson, who has shown absolutely nothing. And then you have the Bengals playing Baltimore, probably without Lamar Jackson, still not practicing.
And just beat them this past week.
Just beat them in the exact same situation. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to play, or Gus Edwards, one of them or both of them. One of the running backs who sat out last week in preparation for this game is the big difference, which he will help. But there's no scenario where Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins upset the Bills, and there's no scenario where Tyler Huntley or Anthony Brown, for that matter, upset the Bengals, which means those two teams will automatically play each other next week, regardless of what happens in the other game, because the Chiefs are the 1, Bills are 2, Bengals are 3, 2 will play 3, and we will get the game that it's I don't say it in a negative way, but we were robbed of that game under very rightfully so circumstances. But we were robbed of that game. It was supposed to be the game of the year that we did not get to see. We will get next weekend in Buffalo instead of Cincinnati.
Except if any given Sunday comes true and Baltimore and Miami just come out of nowhere.
No, I
don't see it. I completely agree with you. But could you imagine that we wake up Monday morning and we're looking squarely at Baltimore having advanced and Miami having advanced?
There's absolutely no way. And the bigger question is, who do the Chiefs play? And then we can fast forward again to the AFC Championship game, and you can give me Chiefs against the winner of that Bills-Bengals game. But without getting ahead of ourselves, the one game that does matter, in my opinion, in the AFC this weekend, Jags and Chargers. Could go either way. I'll let you answer first, and then I'll go into that game a little bit. But who wins that game?
I think the Chargers. I think Justin Herbert gets to go on full display of everything that he's been criticized all year for by every person across ESPN, on Twitter, on TikTok, whatever it is. Everybody loves to go after Justin Herbert like he's the problem, that he hasn't done enough winning, that he hasn't done enough to prove in himself. I get their record is very Jeff Fisher-esque. It's very 500 over someone that we've flaunted over since he came into the league.
Yep.
But his passing yards has been amazing. He's been hit with the injury bug this year. His offensive line was hit with the injury bug. His receiving core was hit with the injury bug. Every aspect of his team has dealt with adversity, not just this year, all 3 of his years, but specifically this year. And squarely looking at it, we're looking at as healthy of a Chargers roster as we've had all season. And towards the stretch of the season, when they were getting healthier, he was only getting better.
Yep.
Having Keenan Allen, having Mike Williams out there, having Carter and having Palmer, both having now experience, you have a real receiving core to throw to. You have Eckler in the backfield that just game changer across the board. So the fact that he wasn't named to the Pro Bowl team or the All-Pro, whatever
Pro Bowl's
it was,
a joke anyway.
like, is mind-boggling because every one of his stats just jumps off the page ahead of everyone else. So looking at that offense and then looking at how scary that defense can be with J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack,
Joey
Bosa as their drafted guy who I named third out of all of that. But as a scary team that is not going to like that. The Jags already beat them once this season. I'm pretty sure in Jacksonville too.
Smoked them. Opposite. Jacksonville smoked the Chargers in LA 38-10.
That's what it was.
I was with you thinking the same thing, and then we talked to Taylor yesterday and we looked it up, and it was like I was taken back that that was a mistake. But Jacksonville smoked them in LA 38-10. But it was like it was week 2. But yes.
But either way, a loss is a loss, and that's not going to sit well with any of the Chargers to let that happen again. They're going to go in with a different energy, different level, where I think you asked yesterday about high scoring and all that. I think that has the chance to be the highest scoring game of the weekend, only because I think the explosiveness of what the Jaguars offense has turned into, that if ETN gets used right, if Lawrence can move the ball, if the receivers get open, like, it's a great defense on the other side, but it's got its holes. You might be looking at a score in the high 40s, 50s, even into the 60s if both teams have some 34-27 type score. You're looking at probably one of the more fun games to watch as far as back and forth.
I think this will be the best game of the weekend. Definitely the best game of the AFC, just given what we just talked about with backups and third-string quarterbacks. Here's what scares me about this game. Chargers, Mike Williams got hurt last week. I think he's going to play, but I don't know if he'll be 100%. I hope I'm not contradicting myself when we talked a couple weeks ago about the Jaguars, and I was talking how, like, everyone's talking about the Lions and their run. No one's talking about Jacksonville, and it looked like Trevor Lawrence and ETN and everybody else, they figured it out. Doug Peterson is a Super Bowl winning coach. They're about to go be a scary team in the playoffs. They can win this game against the Chargers, but last week they basically played a playoff game at home against the Titans, granted, third-string quarterback, and it took a controversial incomplete pass / fumble from that third-string quarterback, Joshua Dobbs, for the defense to pick up and return for a touchdown is the only reason why they're playing in this game and not Tennessee. Tennessee's defense is far better than the Chargers. I'll give them that. I don't see Jacksonville putting up the points that you see them putting up. I don't see the Chargers putting up the points that you see putting up. I think this is a low-scoring, like, defensive battle,
which
is sad to say that I just called it the most exciting game of the weekend. But I just granted
sometimes
everything else.
Is.
Yeah, it's exciting in that, and everything else we're going off of. I'm looking at right now. It's just gross. I think the Chargers win 23-13.
I'll say this based on what you just said. I might be going on a bit of a limb because Brady is Brady, but the Jags remind me of what the Bucs are in the NFC, at least for this first home game, and what they might do if they win it. Like, Jacksonville is that scary underdog team that nobody's thinking about. Like, obviously there's a different aura with the Bucs and Brady, but they're in the same general situation. And as I was reminded by one of my friends last night talking about the Chargers and, like, what action to take on them, they find a way to screw you either way. You could bet them to win, you could bet them to lose, you could do whatever across any part of that game. They're the Chargers. They'll find a way to mess with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, Jags might be the guys for this game. And then it makes it kind of a little more interesting in the AFC if there's a clear way for them to get there and upset the Chiefs and upset.
Well, so that's the other problem. The winner of this game is going to play the Chiefs most likely, right? I think both of them have next to no chance of beating the Chiefs. So my official pick is the Chargers for this weekend. You're going Chargers. You're going
Chargers.
Chargers. We're in agreement on Chargers. I assume we're both in agreement. Bills, Bengals. So now fast forward to next week. Let's just finish off the AFC, and we'll get into the NFC. Chiefs, Chargers next week. Chiefs.
I'd say Chiefs, but it wouldn't surprise me that the Chargers, if they get there, put up a fight because they do it every time they play the Chiefs.
Division game. I get behind that. Okay. Who the heck wins that Bills-Bengals rematch? I hope we get to talk about it next week, assuming that it plays out that way. But in my opinion, and maybe it's like a vague, point to make, I have the winner of Buffalo-Cincy next week beating Kansas City in the AFC Championship, regardless of which team it is. I just can't pick which one.
Yeah.
Every part of me wants to pick Joe Burrow to go back to the Super Bowl. That dude just doesn't care, like who he's playing, where he's playing, whatever. I think they can go back there and win the whole thing. But now with DeMar Hamlin, number one, and two, what is now the repercussion of DeMar Hamlin being this neutral site for Kansas City, Buffalo. I say it all the time. I'm all about like storylines and plugging in like what's the story going to be. I think they're going to talk about this neutral site. I think it's going to happen. So that would then be Chiefs-Bills, which then means Bills win, and I think the Bills can win the Super Bowl. I don't have anybody in the NFC winning the Super Bowl.
Well, so and I've been saying this from the jump once the playoff picture kind of got set. The next week, as long as everything goes right for the Bills and the Bengals, thank you, that we're going to watch 2 Super Bowls before we even watch the Super Bowl, because Bills-Bengal matchup is going to be a Super Bowl in itself of what that game is going to be like. Mm-hmm. And whoever ends up playing the Chiefs, as long as the Chiefs beat whoever comes out of the Chargers-Jags game. Yeah. Like, I can't see any NFC team, even though we haven't even talked about those matchups yet, any of those NFC teams making such a great run that they're going to knock off one of those 3 teams that are going to come out of the AFC likely.
Yeah, every team. So let's dive into it now. We're going to be talking predictions and winners and Super Bowl runs the next couple weeks. These 3 games are, again, they look kind of gross on paper. You have 49ers, Seahawks. That shouldn't be
the only
contest.
Reason that's interesting is it's divisional.
Yeah.
The minute you get there,
it
adds a layer.
Both in agreement that San Fran is going to advance. Philly has the bye, so Philly at the 1, San Fran at the 2. The big game, I guess, that people are talking about, one, because we're in Connecticut and close enough to New York and a lot of Giant fans, that the Giants are the upset of the week. The Vikings all season, they're frauds. They win 1-score games. They're one and done in the playoffs. Everybody kind of backing the Giants right now. At first, I was thinking I'm with them. I'm going Vikings. The game's not at night, so Kirk Cousins is okay. I'm going with the Vikings. I think that offense is talented enough. I don't think the Giants' offense is going to score enough, even though the Vikings' defense is awful. But I think the Vikings can outscore them. This could be a sneaky high-scoring game. Yeah. We were talking a lot about most points for teams and games this week. This might be the most high-scoring game of the week. I'm going to go Vikings, and I'll let you go down your 3 in a second, and then end it with Bucs-Cowboys, which it's Tom Brady and one more run, and he's 7-0 lifetime against Dallas. Yep. And then you have Dallas, who just looked like the worst team I've seen all season against my Commanders, and our third-string quarterback playing their full team lost 26-6, couldn't even put up a touchdown. Dak Prescott, or maybe put up a touchdown, missed the extra point, I forget. Dak Prescott, like 11 of 37, 38, pick 6, like looks like a mess. Yeah. So I don't know which team is going to show up for Dallas. Tampa kind of, like last couple weeks, have looked better, but they haven't looked great all year, and their 8-9 records confirms that. Yep. I'm going to go Dallas.
Wow.
Strictly because, again, matchups and stories. I think if that all falls into place, Philly, San Fran, Minnesota, Dallas gets Philly. Dallas goes into Philly and beats Philly. And Dallas gets San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. And that is my run to the Super Bowl of Brock Purdy being the first rookie quarterback to start for a team in the Super Bowl against the Bills or the Bengals. I don't know yet, but proceed.
So you have Mr. Irrelevant
I do.
Starting the Super Bowl.
I do. He breaks the trend of historically bad play in the
I almost
playoffs.
Don't want to give any part because I love the storyline, every piece that you used to get there, because I'm with you that the 49ers, they might not embarrass the Seahawks, but this is almost a foregone conclusion that the 49ers have just been better all season. They have more high-powered offensive weapons that Kyle Shanahan is going to use and go all over the place, and no matter what Pete Carroll does on the other side, like, just can't stop every different piece all at once. And that defense is scary. So no matter what Geno or Kenneth Walker's got coming out from there, like 49ers, easy.
Good.
For the Giants-Vikings, and I'm going Vikings, so I say this with a grain of salt of saying it all relies on the Giants actually being able to put together, usually it's a run game, it's a pass game. If Daniel Jones can actually effectively throw the ball downfield and find what Hodgkins and Slayton and his different weapons.
Kenny Galladay.
I've heard enough about Kenny Galladay.
He only fell 74 passes short of his incentive bonus. Go ahead.
That without that, Saquon's going to get eaten up. Because the Vikings defense is good enough for this weekend to hold them off, especially if it's a one-dimensional game. And that Vikings offense is as scary as hell if you're able to get Jay Jetta, Thielen, and even Rader, who might have drop problems and whatnot, but you mix those three in with Cook and Madison, like Kirk Cousins, like you said, isn't in prime time, so he's good to go. For the last game, I'm in complete disagreement with you.
Fine. Go ahead.
I'm a Brady guy enough as a Patriots fan. I've watched it over and over again, and if there's enough doubt against him, that is when he overcomes completely. He showed out what he and Evans have been missing all season, which really hurts because Evans was on my fantasy team and really just stuck it to me last week of, I'll go get 40-something points. Couldn't do it all season for you, but it just leads itself to Brady now goes into Philly, and that storyline still exists of Philly beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So Brady gets his road to redemption in Philly.
Okay. I assume you have San Fran beating Minnesota.
Yep.
So you have San Fran, Tampa.
And now Tampa goes into where Brady grew up being a fan.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
Brady now goes and gets to put the work in on San Fran, and it's just, you have your storybook, I have mine that the NFL has already written, because if we want to talk conspiracies, they want the storybook ending.
Yep.
The same way there's the weird conspiracies that the run backs to open each half for the Bills was real.
That was fun.
And planned. But I see Brady back in the Super Bowl. And honestly, this is the time where, like, I could see, like, a Burrow dethroning him. And that makes sense of, like, if this really is the end, then it's the end on his terms. And he went out on the biggest stage.
I don't know what it is that you're just your logic is clouded. That's the word I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Is clouded as a Patriot fan growing up, watching greatness, and thinking that still exists. I get it. My brother's been saying it nonstop. It's playoff Brady. Listen,
Are you telling me it doesn't exist?
No,
Are you telling me the
doesn't
greatness
exist. It
of
doesn't
a
exist anymore.
man
It's
in
gone.
his 40s
It's over.
playing one of the hardest sports and getting hit consistently?
Listen, all the credit in the world to him. All I'm saying, listen, I would love for him to beat the Dallas Cowboys, right? Whether it's as a Commanders fan, whether it's all the clients I have that have maybe put on an Ezekiel Elliott jersey last week.
Joey, alone.
Joey, right?
Yeah.
You go down the list. I would love for Tampa to win this game. I would love for Tampa to go in and beat another division rival of mine in Philly next week. It's just, I don't see it.
It's going to not sit well with anybody or anything to watch Brady lose at home to the Cowboys and then be 7-1 versus the Cowboys.
I'm pretty sure they would be the first team ever to win the Super Bowl with a losing record in the regular season at 8-9. I would imagine they'll be the first. And one more point down that laundry list of things I would love to see in terms of people. I would love to see Stephen A. Smith get on the show on Monday morning with the cowboy hat on and call them an accident waiting to happen and laugh at them, and they always run into their own selves. But
that's what they did in Week 18. That's what they did.
So
we're watching it unravel.
Technically, that was a meaningless game. Philly wasn't losing to the Giants. I think that was one of the better things for the Cowboys. Getting embarrassed last weekend. it meant something, but it didn't mean something. We talked about last week on the show with Joe.
Is CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb. That's got nobody to throw to at this point.
He doesn't need to throw the football. Stop throwing the ball. Hand it to your two horses behind you in Pollard and Zeke. What I'm saying is I think teams it's all about, like, I always mess this up, buy low, sell high, right? Dallas is on the floor right now, and Tampa's played pretty well the last couple weeks. And granted, against their awful division rivals like Carolina and Atlanta, but you're very clouded. I hope you're right for the sake of all those things, but your judgment's very clouded right now.
This is where we add in clouds around my head.
There we have a bunch of clouds around your head right now. So that pretty much does it. Last thing, kind of where I'm heading right now and why I'm a little bit giddy today.
Yeah, you excited?
Me and our cameraman, producer, marketing supervisor, best friend, Anthony Conti. That pretty much checks off all of his boxes.
Check.
Him and I are heading up to Mohegan Sun for the World Baseball Coaches Convention. Apparently it's the 20th year, so they've been around for a while. It's the first I've heard of it.
You going to get a commemorative pin?
I'm going to get pin, name tag, maybe a shirt. We're going to go walk around and listen to some guys talk, anywhere from like the high school level, college level, even some major league level guys talking. I always blank on the UConn's coach, Jim Penders, is his name. He'll be there talking. So go listen and learn and talk to some people and come back with some pretty cool stuff that hopefully we can share with you guys next week. And that pretty much wraps us up. Beautiful.